Good morning, Bruin alumni. Thank you all for joining us here today in person or from wherever you may be around the world for joining our live stream. We are thrilled today to officially kick off our 2018 Freshman Alumni Scholarship selection process. My name is Karen Swanson, and I am the Vice Chair of the Alumni Scholarship Steering Committee. Our committee works year-round to help plan and guide the direction of this wonderful committee and program, along with dedicated Alumni Association staff who you will meet shortly. Believe it or not, our program is in the 82nd year, and this would not be possible without the support of volunteers like yourself. And so on behalf of the Alumni Scholarship Steering Committee, I want to thank you very much for the valuable work that you will be doing this spring in selecting these worthy scholarship recipients. As you can see, we have a full agenda this morning, but it will be full of good information, and we'll be starting with an update from the undergraduate admissions office. Following our staff, they will take you through an overview of the scholarship program with updates of the Alumni Scholars Club before diving into the 2018 scholarship process. From there, we will let you know about additional volunteer opportunities, because once this freshman process is completed, that doesn't mean our work is done. And finally, we will close with an opportunity for questions. So without further ado, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Director of Undergraduate Admissions at UCLA, Mike Drish.
Well, good morning, everyone. One more time, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You are UCLA alumni. You're excited to be here. Welcome to everyone from across the world as well. It's great to have all of you, your interest and your support in this effort. And that's the first thing that I would like to do, is to thank all of you for the work that you do. Because on behalf of our Director of Admissions, Gary Clark, and our Vice Provost of Enrollment, Yolanda Copeland-Morgan, we know that we can't do any of this alone. And our alumni are such critical partners in not only the scholarship process, but the good word you spread about UCLA. Many of you have had other family members go through UCLA, so we really do appreciate all that you do to assist us in this work. And this is one small part, but very important part of what you do as alumni of UCLA. So today, I'm here in my role as Deputy Director of Undergraduate Admission to talk a little bit about what we do and kind of the lay of the land. What do the numbers look like? What are the trends we're seeing in admission? So that you have some great context as you go in to reviewing scholarships this year. So spoiler alert, UCLA is just as popular as ever, which makes our job even tougher in undergraduate admission, but that's a good place to be. It's a good stress level. So I'll say there's probably good and bad stress. We're in the element of good stress. The way I like to frame the talk about undergraduate admission is we frame it in the sense of what is the how, that we have the how and we have the what. So a little bit of context here. Our freshman selection process is governed by faculty policy. So in the University of California system, nothing related to admission escapes the purview of the faculty. And so our process is governed by the faculty. And so what the faculty have done is, we'll kind of go with the what first. The what is the 14 criteria that we can use in undergraduate admission to review and select and admit a group of students to UCLA. The how is within our realm of how do we want to go about doing that. So the faculty give us the criteria. There are 14 different criteria, many of which you could probably name, things like GPA, rigor of coursework, extracurricular activities, involvement in academic success programs, standardized tests, all these different elements that are 14 criteria. Each UC campus can choose to use those criteria how they see fit. And that's the how. Each campus goes about this a little bit differently. Here at UCLA, our how is holistic. We're looking at the entire person. We're not just focused on a number. We're not just focused on one particular type of person. We're getting to know the entire individual, who they are, what they're all about, and determining whether or not we believe they're a good fit for the UCLA campus community. That's an important distinction, because every year I have students and parents who say, so-and-so got admitted to Berkeley but not here, or they got admitted to San Diego but not here, they got admitted here but not to Berkeley. We all have a different how. We're all able to take the what, the 14 criteria, and utilize them in our own ways. And since we're all different campuses, there are 9 UC undergraduate campuses, we all are so different. It always amazes me that people expect us all to act the same in admission, when in reality, I think you all know, we're all very different places. And so there are students who will get admitted to 2, 3, 4, or more UCs, but it has to do with how they fared in the process, not necessarily who they are specifically. It's their connection to the campus. So a little bit about how do we go about that here at UCLA? Well, the first thing is, I'll share the numbers in a bit, but we had 113,000 freshman applications this year. That was an increase of pretty much 11,000 over the year prior. Most of that was driven by California, so that's good in our eyes because we always want to make sure that Californians are viewing UCLA as an option. But when we have 113,000 applications and we review all of them, that means that we have a pretty large organization. And also, we need to make sure that everyone reading those applications knows exactly what to do. Unlike small liberal arts colleges or medium-sized universities where they can have a dedicated admissions staff that can do all of that, there's just no way we could do that at UCLA. And so we have an extensive reader training process because we're training over 300 people to read applications. It's by far the largest operation in the country. We're the most applied to university. So the good news is we actually have the operation to sustain that. That's a testament to UCLA's values and how UCLA supports us in that. Because we have that large operation, every single application here is reviewed twice by a person. And we're talking about a thorough review. Everything is looked at. There's no test score minimums, no GPA minimums, no limits to anything. Every single application, no matter what, gets a full 2 reviews by individual people. As that person is reviewing that file, their advocacy is through one thing, a holistic review score. A holistic review score is essentially a score that ranges from 1 being the best to 5 being a little bit on that lower end, to say, based on the complete review of this application, looking at academics and personal and what they say and all the information they've shared, I will now rate this application based on all of that. That's important as well because there isn't a rating just for academics. There isn't a rating just for involvement. So you can't excel in one area and fare well in our process. You have to have some balance. You have to be a student who has the ability to thrive academically, but balance that with whatever they do in their spare time, their free time, to make an impact, to support their family, to make that difference, to be involved and active and engaged. As you all know as alumni, that means you will thrive at UCLA. If you only had one of those elements, it'd be really tough to thrive here. You can't be just a straight A student and weather UCLA well. You also can't be the most involved student in your high school and come here because you'll probably fail out. And we don't want to set anyone up for failure. And so in our process, we believe mirrors what UCLA is all about, which is why our students are so successful when they get here. We also don't take anything for granted. Multiple checks for consistency and completeness throughout the process. We kind of joke that it's a little Big Brother-ish, but we do read online and we're able to track readers' ratings. And so if someone is reading too quickly, we're going to address that. If someone is being too lenient and suddenly everyone's looking really good, that's probably not the case either. And so we give that counsel and advice to our readers so that there's that quality control check. And that works really well. Because everyone's goal who's reading for UCLA in terms of the admission process is that the review reflects their thoughtful consideration of that full spectrum of what we're looking at. And the word I would use that's the most important is it's a contextual review. Every review is within the context of that student's school environment, their personal environment, whatever it is that we need to know, that's what we're taking into account. It's not just in a vacuum, but it's within the environment of what they've experienced and what they've had the opportunity to take advantage of. So there's a broad concept, or a broad concept of what we're considering. There's merit, absolutely. But beyond that, there's also a lot of other aspects of who a person is that makes them a successful student at UCLA. So this is in no particular order, so don't think there's any hierarchy to it because there's not. As I mentioned, there isn't one factor that will get someone admitted, and there isn't one thing on an application that will ever get someone denied. It's the trend. And I'm going to go out of order here because let's talk about this for a minute. Let's say that someone is a very involved, active student, has great grades in school, but they don't have the best SAT or ACT score. That student isn't going to automatically be denied simply because their test score isn't as strong as some other students, because we're looking at them as a whole person. On the flip side, it's not going to be that one factor such as limited involvement that gets someone denied, because we need to know, what about all these other aspects that we're considering? Is there a reason why they had limited involvement? Maybe it was because they had to be their primary home care provider to their 8 siblings. Maybe their parents needed assistance because of an illness or something like that, and they had to help their family business. And so they couldn't be in student government. Those are the things we want to consider so that we understand the full depth and breadth of an individual, because there's usually a story behind everything that we're looking at. And it's the student. You may be wondering how. How do we kind of determine who gets in? Part of it is the students who share the most. It doesn't have to be that they are the most impressive people on the planet. They do not have to be perfect. I can't imagine anything worse than a campus full of perfect people. That sounds awful. We want students who have stumbled a little bit and learned from that, have some maturity based on that, and that's what we learn from the different parts of the application. Through what they have to say in their answers to the personal insight questions, through what they are sharing in their activities and their statements and things like that, we get that glimpse. And the students who aren't doing that, no matter what all the other things look like, probably aren't going to fare as well in our process, because we need to know more about them as a person. And that's something that most people are really surprised by, that there's the human element is at the foundation of a process that involves 113,000 applications. The value is there on the person, on the people. This is a campus of 30,000 individuals. And if we stop and forget that, then UCLA will not be what it is and what it has been for the past almost 100 years. So we want to hold true to that, even if we are a very popular place. So as I mentioned, we are one of the most select universities in the country. We are the most applied to university. Part of that has to do with our state. We're in the most populous state. We have a growing high school population, but the demand is coming from across the country and across the globe as well. Generally, 1 in 5 of the students who apply are admitted. We, by no means, are happy about that. We would love for that to be a higher admit rate. No one on this campus applauds our selectivity. We want that to be, we want more access. We want more students to have UCLA as an option, but we only have so many seats. We only have so many places for them, so that's something we do struggle with. One thing that I always like to point out, because people don't always know this, is that if a student applies into the College of Letters and Science, major is not a consideration. So students will come up to me sometimes at college fairs and say, so I want to major in biology. Is that going to be difficult? Am I going to be denied? It's like, we don't look at you for biology. So anything in the College of Letters and Science, we're not looking at major. We're looking at, are they prepared to thrive at UCLA? Now for the other specialty or professional schools, which would be engineering, arts and architecture, music, nursing, and theater, film, and television, major is critically important. As you can imagine, if you're applying to be a film major versus a nurse versus an engineering major, there is some level of preparation and skill and ability that we need to be able to gauge. The good news is, I always tell students, I'm not the one gauging that. You don't want me to judge whether or not you're an acting talent. The faculty in theater, film, and television would do that. The faculty in arts and architecture will do that. So we'll do our initial 2 reviews of every single application, and then we pass every one of those onto the specialty or professional schools. They choose to use what we've said about the applicant with our rating, how they want. Many of them have additional supplemental applications, auditions, interviews. They may ask for other things from students, and then they make their decisions based on that. And that is a faculty-led process, like I mentioned. So in the specialty schools, the faculty have the final say on who gains admission. We review that to make sure there's no issues with that. And every once in a while, there might be that world-renowned oboist who just couldn't put together anything but D's in English that we need to say, just can't have that student. They won't thrive at UCLA. They're doing more. This isn't a conservatory. And so we always have to sometimes remind our very well-intentioned faculty of that who love that. But we work very closely with the specialty schools. But if a student applies to the College of Letters and Science, the review is in the admissions office, and it's based on the UC application itself. And major is not a consideration in that process. All right, I spoiled this slide a little bit with sharing the numbers earlier, But as you can see this year, and the numbers in the blue bar are freshmen and the yellow bar are transfer students. So this year we had 113,000 freshman applications and 23,000 transfer applications. And so a grand total of 137,000 applications. We are the most applied to UC, we're the most applied to university in the country. Kind of a fun fact, for all of the students who apply to the University of California through the application, 62% of them apply to UCLA. So it is definitely a leader in students applying to the UC in general. You can see this increase has been fairly consistent. We really don't know what happened this year because you'll notice it's a bigger jump from 17 to 18. It's actually the second largest increase in recent UCLA history. Going back to like the GI Bill and things, that's a different world. But in the last 30 years, this has been the second largest increase. The earlier one was around 2010. And so we're not really sure why that happened, but the good news is, while that number is the highest, it's the most academically qualified and the most diverse group of applicants that UCLA has ever seen. And so that's what gives us great comfort, is knowing that we're reaching every single type of student, but most importantly, every single type of student who is prepared to be at UCLA. That makes your jobs and our jobs tougher because they all look great. And so we have to make some really tough choices among great students. Like I mentioned, most of that is driven by California. Over 70,000 of those applicants are from California. It is by far the majority of students applying. But as you can see, and especially those of you from across the country and around the world, rest assured there is a high level of interest in students from all across the United States. And most importantly, we're very happy to see that growth overseas. Because with the narrative out there in the world for the United States, I think that the fact that UCLA has been able to weather that effectively, and Los Angeles is a very welcoming place, we're happy to see that there's still that interest in applying and enrolling at UCLA from our friends and prospective students across the globe. I like this slide because it tells a little bit of a story here. So this is the number of freshmen admits, and you can see those bar graphs and how they move. And we also have it by residency, which I like this because purple should always be the dominant column there because those are our California residents. We are a University of California campus. We love our Californians. They will always be the overwhelming majority of students coming to UCLA. But as you all know, being surrounded by Californians does not prepare you for the world at large. And so we want students to be surrounded by students from the other 49 states and from hundreds of countries worldwide. That makes their experience even better. And so that's why we do have those admitted students from areas outside of California. Now you will notice that 2016 is a year where that bar got a little higher than where it's been traditionally. Give you a little bit of quick history. In 2015, the governor of California, Jerry Brown, and President Janet Napolitano here at the UC came to an agreement that the University of California system would grow by 10,000 California residents over the course of 3 years. Great news, sounds good, and it is a good thing. We always want more Californians on our campus. And so each of the 9 UCs were to participate in that growth. UCLA was one of the highest takers of students out of that number. We were very willing and able and wanted to participate in that. 2016 was the first of a 3-year growth model in Californians. The first year would be 5,000 system-wide. The second year would be 2,500 and 2,500 above 2014 numbers. So kind of that quick math is in 2016, the system would grow by 5,000. In 2017, the system would grow by another 2,500. And in 2018, the system would grow by another 2,500. So this number is bigger because we were participating in a growth of 5,000. This number is starting to get a little bit back to steady state because we were participating in a growth of 2,500. And that's what 2018 will look like, is we'll participate in a growth of 2,500 as well. After that, we will get back to where we were here, which is, you'll notice we're going back 4,300 will be around 4,200, and then we'll get back to around 4,000. The good and the bad here is that anything that comes out of Sacramento, there's a benefit and a negative. It's a short-term feel-good. This was a great year. But what ends up happening is, as applications increase, and as the number of spaces on campus stays either the same or slightly decreases, we get more selective. and that means we also are not able to admit as many students because we don't have as many spaces. Also, the yield, which is the number of students who are admitted to UCLA who choose to come, continues in our largest population category to increase. The fact that, that the number of Californians who are admitted to UCLA say yes at a rate nearing 50% is unheard of in the country. Just to give you a little context, even Harvard only yields 75%. So UCLA is at about 50% for Californians, and we think this year that will go over 50%. So that means, can we offer admission to a lot of people? Not when half of them are saying yes. We never know exactly which half will say yes, so we always have to be careful. It's why we don't just offer admission to that number and know, because we never know what they'll all do. These are 18-year-olds after all. We can't totally predict what they'll do. But we feel pretty good about what we can do. And then also, out-of-state and international. International students yielded about 30%, and out-of-state students yielded about 21, 22%. Most private universities in the United States yield around 30%. Like, we're talking your top 25 private schools, the Dukes, the Vanderbilts, the U Chicagos, places like that. So UCLA's yield numbers are extremely high. They are high for private universities, and they are extremely high for public universities. So where a lot of other schools have a feel-good, because they admit a lot of people to get that number, we don't have to admit as many people to get the number that we need for the freshman class or the transfer class. So I say that because back to the students who are trending admit, the students that you're going to be reviewing, are incredible students because we're not casting this huge net with admission because so many of them take us up on the offer. That's a testament to what we're doing here at UCLA. And if you wanted to know what does that yield rate look like, what has that kind of trend been? In California, it went that high year, 2016, we had an 18% admit rate. Last year was a 15% admit rate, and this year we're predicting maybe about a 14% admit rate. Again, something that we do not wear as a badge of honor, but just more for that context. You'll notice the admit rate for out-of-state is a little higher. The reason that is because a lot of people don't understand why. They think that that means it's easier to get in to UCLA from out-of-state. That's not it. What was the yield rate for out-of-state students? 21%, which means do we have to offer admission to more people to get the number, the 1,600 we need? Yes, many of you are shaking your head. So it's not easier to get admitted. It's still the exact same process and the same type of students getting admitted because we have over 20,000 out-of-state applicants. But to get that number, because the yield is so low, we need to offer admission to a slightly larger group than we do in California or even international because more of those students are saying yes. So people will look at this slide and think it's easier. It's not easier at all. We're not dipping, and I'll show you that in the next slide. We just know the trends of what students out of state will do, and not as many will say yes to us. So we need to make sure that we are offering admission to enough to fill those 1,600 spaces in the freshman class for overseas and domestic non-resident. Something that the UC makes every single campus do is there's a policy called compare favorably. So this goes back to if you're going, well, is it easier as a non-resident to get admitted? Nope, it is not. Because we have to demonstrate every year, every campus has to do this, that there's a compare favorably aspect that students admitted from domestic non-resident or international students must compare favorably to California residents. And essentially, the university faculty have said on GPA and test score, that's how we'll measure this. And as long as California residents are not held to a higher standard, the campus is within the jurisdiction of what that UC policy is all about. And as you can see, looking at last year's admits, UCLA continues to meet the compare favorably policy. Again, we're not really ever concerned about that because of the quality of our applicants, but it's something that I think is good for everyone to know. So just a really quick profile of last year's class, because obviously you're going to be helping us to select scholarship recipients that ultimately will be admitted, and we'll know more about the class in a few months. But essentially last year we admitted around 16,000 students. So while we did have that admit rate of about 14% or 15%, that's still 16,000 people getting admitted to UCLA. That's a big number, which I think is something to still celebrate. 57% of those admitted students were female. You will remember that we are a proposition state, and so we do not use gender or race or ethnicity in our admission or our selection process. So 57%, that was just, we know that number after we've sent out the offers of admission, then we can go back and actually pull in that data. 21% were low income and 23% were first gen. All those numbers have held fairly consistent for the last number of years. And then really quickly, just some data points about test scores and GPA. As I mentioned, our review goes well beyond that, but it's nice to see where those students are falling. Quick note, many of you may know the SAT is now back to a 1,600 point scale. It jumped to a 2,400 scale for a little while, but now it's back to where most of you would remember the SAT and I would remember it. So it's back to the 1,600 scale. And honors semesters is just an idea of how many specific semesters through the courses of students had. So that number sometimes looks really big to people, but it's actually individual courses within the semester. So that's why that number looks a little bit bigger. So a few key takeaways before we go to questions. This year, record number of applications. We keep hoping that there'll be one year we can just say we went up by one. We always want to say we went up. That's always good in admissions, but just one, not thousands. So the quality is just extraordinary, both of the incoming class last year and the applicant pool this year. So last year's enrolling class was the most academically qualified in UCLA history. This year's applicant pool so far is even more qualified than last year's class. And so keep that in mind. Also, the class of 2017 and right now our applicant pool reflects a great growth in racial and ethnic diversity, which we believe is a strong value, especially considering we have Proposition 209. We can't use it in the review process. So our goal is to ensure that our applicant pool is made up of people from every single walk of life in the state. And while I have some racial and ethnic diversity up there, that means from every, sexual orientation, from geographic origin, from socioeconomic background, from race and ethnicity, from gender and identity. We want to make sure that the UCLA applicant pool is made up of every single walk of life, background, and perspective that our state and our country represents, so that when we go into that process and can't look at everything like other universities, odds are when we've admitted those students, as you can see from the stat, we have some pretty good, strong things to talk about without actually having to use that flag. And the fact that the only reason that we have second on all these stats is because the class got smaller last year. If we had maintained the growth we had 2 years ago, these would all say the largest. So we had to reduce it because the class was reduced, and by default, every population was reduced a bit. But the fact that in UCLA history we're still admitting and enrolling the most diverse classes in every sense of the word is a strong testament to the work that everyone's doing on this campus. So, some data, some insight hopefully. Now's your time to ask me questions, because I specifically don't talk about everything, because I know you'll have questions. So don't worry if you're like, he didn't talk about that. Should I ask him? Yes. Absolutely can, because I didn't cover everything. So what questions do you have about the admission process, the landscape of admissions in higher ed, how UCLA goes about admitting and selecting students? What would you like to know? Not all at once. Yeah.
I'd like to know, when they apply to UCLA, say they do want to go to the nursing school or the School of Film and Television or whatever, it comes through you first, right?
Correct.
So they're applying to UCLA generally as a whole. And then at what point does it get shoved over to the specialty school?
So the question was, when a student applies to one of those specialty or professional schools, one, how does that process kind of work in the sense that it comes to our office? How does it go to those offices? Kind of, I'll give you a quick timeline through that. So a student fills out the UC application. They submit that by November 30th. So there's one deadline with the UC. There's no early decision, there's no early action, all these terms you might have picked up if you've been through the process, just what we call regular decision. One deadline, and then we have one release date in March. What happens after November 30th is the student applies, the UC applications all come into our office. Our staff review every single one of them, no matter what the major that the students applied to, so every application gets 2 reviews. After that, we pass those applications on to the faculty in each of those specialty schools. Meanwhile, as we're doing that review, after that student submits their application, they'll get an alert that says, you've applied to the nursing school. Here's a link to the nursing supplement. You have until December 15th to complete the nursing supplement and send it in. If every school except engineering has something that goes out to those students, usually a deadline in December or maybe January, because we will pass those applications along to those specialty schools usually sometime in January. So they get all of our holistic review scores, they have their supplement, and then they will sometimes do interviews. They may have auditions, like the music school or theater, film, and television will host auditions where the students are coming to campus or going to in the Bay Area, they do it and things like that. And then those schools will make their selection and send that to us and say, like music will say, here are the students we want to admit. They have guidance from us on here's how many spaces you have. So Yolanda Copeland-Morgan, our vice provost for enrollment, works very closely with the provost and the chancellor and others on kind of what is that target. And then they know that we need X number of admits to yield X number of enrolled students based on history.
I know throughout the country, that's the time period. I mean, if you have a really specialty student, they are recruited so heavily.
Yes.
So UCLA is being very smart to jump on them.
Yes.
As soon as they get through the initial
Exactly.
process. Oh, okay,
Yes.
I got it.
So, and what ends up happening, giving you a sense of, we talked about yield for overall, the specialty schools are extremely high. To yield 40 nurses, we usually only admit about 50. Like that's, and again, back a testament to UCLA. Those students know what they want. Same theater, film, and television. Film has 20 freshman spaces. They usually only have to admit maybe 30 students to get those 20. So that's why they're so selective. It's not because we like selectivity. It's because the rigor or the reputation and the knowledge of that program is known. And so it's, once we offer in those areas, most students will take us up on the offer. But their process of the supplement, the interviews, the auditions, ensures that the faculty know who that is. And the students engaged in us. They get to come to UCLA or maybe the Bay Area, meet with faculty, see facilities, get to know some pretty cool people associated with this place. It's like, why wouldn't you want to come here? So yeah, it's happening very early on. Exactly. Question back here, it looks like. Or, yep.
I have an online question.
Great.
How does admissions compare the academic performance across different school districts in the state and country? For example, it may be easier to achieve 4.0 GPA in certain schools.
Great question. So to that person's point, we absolutely know a 3.7 is not a 3.7 is not a 3.7, even though they're all 3.7s. So we look at students, remember the word context? Within the context of their school, we have a few ways that we learn about this. One is history. In California, we have the great benefit of decades of high volume of students applying from different schools and seeing trends. So if a student applies from, there are certain schools in California that over half or more of their senior class applies to UCLA. That's a wealth of data, history, that most universities and colleges would just strive to get. So in California, we have our own historical data to understand the context of a student's performance within that school. There are schools, though, in California where we don't have that history. There are new schools formed like public high schools, especially in some areas. And then obviously outside the state and outside the country, we haven't had that long history. And so what we look at there is schools have profiles that they develop, and they'll send along to us. We can use, if they don't send us a profile, our readers are trained to do research into that, to actually look at that school's website, see if there's information about curriculum offered, grade trends, percent of students who have certain GPAs, what are the limitations. Some schools say students can take no more than 2 AP classes for their junior and senior year. So why would we compare a student the same as a school that is open-ended with AP courses? We wouldn't. We're looking at it within the context. There are so many educational systems. You have AP, IB, no honors or advanced courses. You have the British system, you have the Indian system, you have the French system. You have all of these different curriculums that we as a staff get to know, understand, have guides, and we review students within the context of that educational system. Because what I always hear from students is, one, will you know my school? Yes, we will. Even if we don't know it now, we'll get to know it. We'll never make a decision just making an assumption. If we can't find anything on the website, we call. We'll call a counselor, we'll call an administrator and say, We want to know more about your school. Why do your students only do this? Why are we only seeing this? And sometimes students will give us great context in their personal insight questions or their additional comments for academics, and they'll say something like, you may notice my only B is in AP Chem, and there were no A's given to that class. Good to know. Thank you, student, for sharing that, because we want to know that. The fact now your B makes a little bit of an impact. Granted, through our historical data, well, we'd probably see that if that was a going trend with a teacher, but it's always nice that students help us out with that. So context matters so much. And so it's true, though. There are curriculum and areas where students have more opportunity and less opportunity. We just want to make sure we're reviewing within that context. It doesn't mean it's easier to come from a rural school or an under-resourced urban school. It doesn't mean it's harder to get in from a high-resource private school. The review is still the same, just within that context. Do we want to go with one of the audience questions, then back online? You want to do it? Yep, let's go here, and then we'll go back online.
I have a question about the yield.
Yeah.
It's great that you have all these analytics and data about the state. Do you also gather data about when we don't have the students that we offer admission to choose UCLA, where do they normally go to? Who are we losing them to?
Yes, great question. So there's something called the National Clearinghouse that actually keeps track of that. They'll survey students and they'll say where they enrolled, where they didn't go. We also ask students when they SIR, the Statement of Intent to Register, or they say no. We also have a survey where they can indicate where they are going. And what's impressive is where we lose students to, because we're losing them to Ivies, Stanford, and our win-loss rate against Berkeley is much better every year. So we are losing less students to Berkeley. The automatic where students used to say kind of, if you'd go to Berkeley, and then you'd go to UCLA, and then you'd probably go to fill in the blank, that really has been challenged in the last 3 or 4 years. That it's not an automatic, like in at Berkeley, UCLA, go to Berkeley. In the numbers it was in the past. But yeah, I mean, the challenge, I will honestly say, is when you lose a student to Stanford or you lose a student to Harvard, there's an element of, I understand, just in prestige, that and the family sometimes might drive that, like the challenge of passing up that offer. But oftentimes also where it comes in is the financial aid that those schools offer. At Stanford, I think it's like if you make under $130,000 a year, you pay zero. So, the UC has done a great job with financial aid. I think we've made it competitive, but it's not that process. And so not only sometimes is it the offer of admission, but it's also in combination with, and I never have to pay X. That's a tough offer. So, and public universities and a lot of private universities struggle with that. Only I think about 20 or 30 universities offer to meet full need. And so but there are 4,000 college and universities in the country. So, but our peer group, our competitors, are most of those 20 universities. So that's where we really want to make sure that we're offering a financially competitive offer, so we make it tough for students to say no to us, or hopefully they don't say no, and that's usually the case. So we do know that, but it's the Ivies, Stanford, Berkeley, SC are pretty much the competitors that we're looking at.
For specialty schools, if the specialty school does not want them, but they otherwise look extremely good, will they be considered for the College of Arts and Sciences?
Great question. So we, in almost all cases, will not consider a student for a second choice major. And here's why. By the time a student goes through that process we just outlined with the specialty schools, do you remember when I said that they give us those decisions? March. When do we release admissions decisions? March. How could so the challenge would be if we get those students back for music and theater, film, and television that they say no to, and we've just reviewed and have this great group of college students we want to admit, do we have time or do we want to bump all of those first choice students for a student who said they wanted theater first? We don't have time to do it, even if we wanted to do it. And so when a student is not admissible to a specialty school, they are not considered for the college because we have a few days, essentially, to turn that around, and to go through those thousands of students, even if we wanted to, is just not possible. And also, I think it would impact our yield and the happiness of our students here, because we try and tell students when they apply, if you want to be an engineering major, apply to engineering. Don't apply to physics. Because if you come here and you're in engineering and you love it, great. If you don't like it, you can always switch into physics, into chem, into something completely different. But we don't want to bring them in to take up spaces in physics, knowing that they might always be trying to get into engineering, never be able to do it, and will they just transfer to some other place, or will they not be as happy? So we aren't able to do that, but also philosophically, we don't want to fill the college with students who have that as their second choice. Another question.
I understand the GPA, the weighted GPA is capped at like 2 extra points per semester. Is that still correct? And also, I also heard that you might not, UCLA and maybe another school or two in the UC system might not be capping the GPAs anymore. Is that true?
Thank you for your question, because the UCs all used to cap weighted GPA, and now that is not the case. So UCLA does not cap a weighted GPA. Most of the other campuses don't. It's not universal. So some of the UC campuses do still cap the weighted GPA, but we do not. Because again, with that context, GPA is not really driving the process, so we kind of did away with that. That's from a bygone era when it was kind of GPA test score, you're in or out. And so we've kind of moved beyond that. And so that's an old kind of UC calculation that we don't abide by or utilize at UCLA. And I think that a lot of the other highly selective UCs also don't do that. So there's a bit of that misunderstanding, because some do and some still don't. And some people know that we used to do it, but we don't do weighted capped GPA at UCLA anymore. It's not a part of the process, not something we track. Other questions?
I believe the stat was.
Yeah, well, sorry, they're trying to get the microphone around to, so maybe can we come down here after we go with the online question? We probably have time for about 1 or 2 more questions too. Yeah.
I believe the stat was 15 to 18-hour semesters. Is that effectively 1.5 years of all honors/AP courses for high school students?
Yeah, so that rough estimate would be correct. I mean, most students have the ability to take honors classes for 3, sometimes 4 years of their high school, and usually AP classes for 2 or 2.5 years of high school. So as you could see, the average number of students who are in settings where they have that are going to be in a majority of their years are either AP or honors courses. By no means do we encourage students to do kind of like the full slate of APs. We tell every single student, take the curriculum that balances your ability to be in a rigorous classroom environment, but still get the A's and B's. And so often, those will be the students, keep in mind this rigor, there might be a student who's looking at a major in, like, say, history or English. We will tell them, if you want to take calculus, that's fine. But AP statistics might be just as beneficial to you. AP physics might be a great class, but you could take AP environmental science and still get a rigorous science class. So keep that in mind. Certain schools that offer APs or honors, there's such a wide variety that one of the things we try and do as admissions counselors is counsel them depending on the major, and it's really engineering or not, what should you be taking? So I keep that in mind. If you're reviewing applicants, if they're looking at engineering, they probably, to be competitive, would have to have calculus and physics in some way. But if they're not applying to engineering, that's not the expectation from the admissions office, unless the student just wanted to take those classes. But AP Environmental Science, AP Stat, all these other classes are perfectly competitive, rigorous classes. And sometimes we have to really help students understand that too, so that they are able to still get that advanced coursework, but do well in addition.
Thank you. For out-of-state and international applicants, do you balance geographically?
So we don't, so the benefit is we don't look at geography in our process, in the sense that we're not giving advantage or disadvantage to students based on the state they come from or anything like that. Because of the volume of applications, we actually do tend to enroll students from all across the country. There are years where we don't have all 50 states represented, and we're okay with that. We kind of joke that just being from North Dakota doesn't get you automatically in, because it's a small state and everyone's kind of after that 50th state or whatever it may be. So there are years where we'll have students from 45 states or 48 states or all 50 states. We'll have years where we'll have students from 90 countries or 110 countries. The key thing is we're out and about, visiting schools, connecting with counselors, alumni doing what they're doing across the globe, spreading the good word about UCLA so that students are interested. And that's ultimately gets them in the applicant pool so that we're drawing from a geographically diverse campus or possible population. But it's amazing how when you go overseas or across the country, UCLA as a brand. And that's something that most universities just don't have. There are a few universities that have a brand that is universal. And then there are a lot that would strive to do that, and they have to do more to kind of admit geographically and try and build their name. We're fortunate that we don't have to do that in ways that other schools might have to. So that's why we don't have to use it. So it's nice that we don't have to.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. We'll go with maybe, one more? We'll go, yep, you are the last
I was going to
one.
ask you,
Love your hat.
are legacy preferences considered in admission?
Great question. So on the UC application, there is absolutely no way that a student can share their legacy connection to UCLA or any of the UCs. That is a philosophical decision by the University of California for a few reasons. One is we are a large institution. The number of alumni affiliated with UCLA and the UC, we would probably have more students applying that have a legacy connection than those 6,000 spaces in the freshman class. So automatically, if we ask the question, we're going to upset people because we would have more legacy connections than spaces in the class. Secondly, one of the philosophical reasons behind it is we never want any question to be a barrier to access for a student. And if a first-generation college student or a low-income student or a student from a rural area fills out the UC application and sees a question like that, would they self-select out thinking, it's stacked against me? I don't have a chance here, like they sadly see at other university applications. So we don't believe the benefit outweighs the possible negative of the process. That said, we have so many students here who have a legacy connection. And the good news is we don't need that box to have that generations of Bruins and UC families. And I think that is, again, just a stronger testament to the strength of the Bruin families and that they're able to maneuver that without having a box that's checked along the process. So I think that's the good news. That change there's just no interest in even considering that as changing at the UC, and we're very supportive of it staying as it is. So we value, obviously, like I said, alumni. We have so many connections to alumni in our current student population, and so that works really well in our mind, and it's a well-oiled machine at this point, so that's why we're not looking to change it. Great questions. Thank you from those of you across the country and across the globe. Thank you to everyone here today for your questions and your interest and for reviewing these applications. We appreciate it, and we know that the scholarship that you're selecting for really does help impact that yield. So we are really appreciative that the Alumni Association supports our incoming students and our current students in that way, and thank you for your time and effort with helping as well. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Did a great job. So helpful. I know this will help you all in helping us read these applications and moving our process forward. I'm Christine Werlenik. I'm Senior Director of the Alumni Scholars Program, Regional Network, so I oversee the alumni groups around the world, and Bruin Recruitment, which is the Alumni Association's relationship to admissions, because we do work closely with them. And I now want to introduce you to the team that you'll be working with. Each member of our team has a unique role in moving the scholarship process forward. George Brown, who is not here today, who I know many of you know and love George Brown, he works directly with our students and manages the Alumni Scholars Club, and you'll learn more about the Alumni Scholars Club a little bit later. And Jacob Sproul, right here up front, and you'll be hearing from him again later too. Jacob keeps things moving behind the scenes, and you will interact with him the most during this process. You might have already talked to him about today, but if you have questions or having issues with the online system or whatever, Jacob's the person you'll most likely talk to. And I also want to introduce Anna Hamilton, who is our coordinator extraordinaire. Anna's actually out there, but you've probably interacted with her today. She keeps us organized and makes sure that events like today are perfect in every way. I want to provide you some history and context of the Alumni Scholars Program. It started in 1936, where we awarded 2 scholarships at $150 each. Thus, the Alumni Scholars Program was born. 82 years later, we fund 797 awards to students at $1.6 million in need and merit-based scholarships. So what does Alumni Scholarship mean? This refers to any student who has received a scholarship from the Alumni Association. And the students who receive the Alumni Scholarships have an added bonus of being part of the Alumni Scholars Club. The significant impact for this group of students is the prestige of being selected into this competitive program. So that's what you're helping us do, is to select these students for the Alumni Scholars Club. And in your packet, and those of you virtually would have already received this, is a document that recaps all the activities the Alumni Scholars Club has done this academic year. This gives great insight into the students who are part of this program and the leadership development they receive. The Alumni Scholars Executive Board is comprised of 14 students who, with our office, plan and implement all the activities on that sheet. Pretty impressive, right? The most unique part of the Alumni Scholars Club is the word alumni. No other student on campus has the opportunity to network with alumni like this group does. These students are building their alumni network as students. These students also have access to cutting-edge leadership development programming, including curriculum such as interview workshops, public speaking, resume and writing critique, and the mentor program. So all students on campus can have an alumni mentor. What is special for our Alumni Scholars Club students is they choose first. So they have access to choose their alumni mentor before any other student on campus. So we're giving them a little extra advantage of being part of this club. Another benefit is the access to additional need-based grants. So the process you are reading for is to select students based on merit, not need. But once students are selected, we then will look at need and be able to give them an additional $5,000 in need-based grants. So the freshman scholarship award is $4,000 to $20,000 paid over 4 years, and transfer students are $4,000 paid over 2 years. So automatically in their first year, after the students have been selected, our office works with the financial aid office to see who has additional need. We first attack student loans, and then we look at their work study and can give them up to $5,000 additional in need-based grants. We want the students when they're here to be students and not feel financially burdened. After their first year, the students then need to apply for the Edie and Lou Wasserman grant. This application looks at what they've been doing since they've been on campus, how have they been involved, et cetera. This grant, additional grant, is also up to $5,000 to assist with need. Now I want to bring up Jacob, who's going to talk about the scholarship reading process.
Okay, thank you, Christine. So we're going to start today with sort of the 40,000-foot view of what this freshman process is going to look like from start to finish. Okay, so I'm going to share with you the key dates. You might want to jot these down. They're also in your folder, so you can highlight them. We're going to go through it step by step, and then we're going to take it a little bit more on a detailed view and talk about the application process for which you'll be reading. So first and foremost, students have had the opportunity to complete their scholarship since November 1st. So the application has been open since then. It'll close on March 12th, so they still have a few more weeks in which to finish up their applications. As Mike said, or as Mike alluded to, admissions notifications hopefully will go out March 16th. So that's the estimated day that application decisions will go out to all of those 100 and some thousand students who have applied to University of California, Los Angeles. So it's an exciting day. That evening, we go to work. So we immediately take out all the applications of the students for our scholarship who were not admitted. We take the applications of those who were, we divide them into groups, and we email them out to you to begin your review process. So if you're reviewing virtually, we'll go through the different types of ways that you can review applications this year, but if you're reviewing with us virtually, then you'll receive an email from us that evening, so be watching your email inbox with your applications to review via a Dropbox link. You'll also receive your individualized scoring sheet and a scoring rubric. And we'll take you through what those look like, so we'll demystify that process for you. Now, should you wish to read applications in person, we have that option available for you as well. This is a great tradition here at Alumni Scholarships. We're excited to bring that back. So if you're in the Southern California area, you can join us here on campus at the James West Alumni Center to read applications with fellow application readers on March 17th, so St. Patrick's Day. Wear your green, blue, and gold that day. If you're in the Bay Area, you can join us the following day. So we actually take our show on the road. We head up to San Francisco, and we do an application reading in the Bay the next day, March 18th. This year, that'll be held in Emeryville. So for those of you watching online who are from the Bay Area, we're hopeful that that location works well. It tends to be very centrally located. If you're in Oakland, San Jose, San Francisco, Wine Country, wherever you are, please join us in Emeryville if you'd like to read in person. Of course, that virtual option is still available whether you're in Southern California or in Northern California or wherever. Feel free to read, with a cup of coffee in the comfort of your bed on a Sunday morning. That's open to you as well. So from there, once once the scores are compiled by March 18th, that's critical. Once those scores are submitted by the 18th, we then normalize all those scores. So we work with a statistician, and then we identify roughly the top 300 candidates from those applications that you've scored. Those individuals, those students, are then moved into the second half of the process, the regional interviews. So those regional interviews, and Christine will talk about this in a little bit more depth later, but those will take place March 31st, April 7th, and April 8th. So we know we're working on a lot of holidays during that time of the year, so it's a challenging time period. But that March 31st date, this one has a little bit of an asterisk next to it. So this date is primarily for our students who are located in an area where there's not an alumni panel available. So, they may be in a more rural part of California, they may be out of state in an area outside of a major metropolitan area. We will be here on campus that day doing virtual Skype interviews with those students. So if you're located in the Southern California area, we encourage you to volunteer for that opportunity, but those will be our virtual interviews. April 7th and 8th, those are the key days for our regional interviews that will be taking place in person. If you are, again, here in Los Angeles or in Southern California, April 7th, that's a Saturday, that will be our day for regional interviews here for our Los Angeles-based applicants. April 7th and 8th, it may be the 7th, it may be the 8th, it may be both of those dates. It depends, depending on where you're located across the country. And again, Christine's going to highlight this in a little bit more depth in a little bit, so hopefully that'll make a little bit more sense. From there, all those scores come back to us April 8th, and then we again work with our statistician. We look at all those scores, and then we're able to make offers to about 150 students for an alumni scholarship. That date is April 12th. We are so excited, and thank you again so much for allowing us to move up our volunteer process. We know it's a tight time window that we're giving you to review these applications, but it is so critical to be able to tell students their status before Bruin Day and as early as possible so that we can yield these students, right? As Mike highlighted, we want to get them to UCLA. We want to show that UCLA is where they need to be, and we're up against the big boys, right? Like, we are up against these schools that have a lot of money, and we want to be able to give them a full picture of their financial package that UCLA is able to offer them. So by doing that before Bruin Day, we are most successful. Bruin Day is April 14th. April 14th is going to be a great day. Hopefully, many of you have volunteered or participated in Bruin Day. Maybe you attended as a student. Bruin Day, it's actually my favorite day of the year here at UCLA. We put out our best foot forward. It's an opportunity for students to come to campus, kick the tires, so to speak, and really learn if UCLA is the right school for them. They get to talk to a whole host of different offices, and we actually hold a reception for incoming alumni scholars. So if they've been awarded and notified that they're receiving that alumni scholarship, they can join us here at the James West Alumni Center on Bruin win day for a reception. Again, this all just helps in our yielding abilities to be able to connect them to fellow students, staff members, get to hopefully make a few new friends, and again, start developing those ties to UCLA just as soon as they are admitted. National Finals competition, that's April 22nd, another great day here on campus. I'm sure many of you have participated before as judges for National Finals. If you haven't, I really encourage you to read applications and participate in interviews so you can join us as a judge for National Finals. It's a lot of fun. We invite our top 20 scoring students from the interview process to join us here on campus to compete for additional money up to $20,000. These students are the cream of the crop. As Mike highlighted, just by virtue of getting into UCLA, these students are amazing. We are talking about the ultimate. These students will knock your socks off. They blow me away every single year. So hopefully you can join us and get to know these students. Christine's going to walk us through what that day is going to look like in a little bit more depth later. This all leads to the SIR date, May 1st. So this is the student statement of intent to register. This is when they need to let us know if they're going to come to UCLA. So this is their deadline. This is what we work towards. Certainly our work is not done after May 1st. We'll talk about some other opportunities later that are available. But for the freshman process, that serves as the concluding date. Okay, so let's talk about the first step in this process. So we're going to scale it back. We're going to talk about just the application review. We're going to walk you through what you need to know to read applications, all right? So volunteers who are not able to join us in person can read online. Even if you, are located just off campus and you want to read online, that's fine too. So as I mentioned, there's opportunities Northern California, Southern California, and wherever you may be to read applications. We are anticipating March 16th for that for those applications and your scoring sheet to hit your inbox, okay? Emails, like I said, emails will be sent with a secure link to a Dropbox where you can download PDF files of all of the applications you're being asked to read, along with a scoring scale and a scoring sheet. That scoring sheet is a link to a program called JotForm. You will be given an individualized link to a JotForm that you will then complete for every individual student. For those of you who read with us last year, that will be very familiar. If you read with us virtually, the process will be very similar. We made a few tweaks to our JotForm based on the feedback that we received last year. So last year was our first year bringing this process fully online. We were so excited to be able to do that so that people could read no matter where they're located. We know that we have over 500,000 alumni in all corners of the globe, and we want all to be able to read. So we're excited to have that, but this was a new process. We've made some improvements, and we hope that you'll enjoy those improvements. And of course, we're always open to feedback as well. Okay, so let's talk about the actual application now and what you can expect to see when you open that Dropbox and start reviewing those applications. This is what we ask for on the application from students. We ask them to submit to us their extracurricular activities, their volunteer work and community service, anything that's unpaid, honors and awards, any employment if applicable, additional information. We'll talk about this in a little bit more depth in just a minute. Essay questions, we ask for responses to 2 different essay questions, as well as 1 letter of recommendation. Now, the UC application doesn't ask for a letter of recommendation. We do. We accept 1 letter of recommendation, and this can help, again, provide a lot of context. We'll look at an example of that in just a minute. So how are these sections broken down in terms of the point spread? So every application will be scored on a point scale of 100 points. Make it pretty simple in that way, so it's all out of 100 points. Extracurricular activities and community service is worth the largest chunk, so this is 40 points. Again, this is a merit-based program, so everything you're seeing on here as far as scoring goes towards that merit component of our scholarship. We don't look at needs at this point. We don't look at grades. By virtue of getting into UCLA, you can rest assured that their academics are pretty top-notch. So extracurricular activities, community service, 40 points. Honors and awards, that accounts for an additional 10 points of their application. The 2 essay questions are each worth 20 points, so 40 points total, and then a letter of recommendation for 10 points. So if you're joining us via live stream, you were sent a few documents, this being one of them, our scoring rubric. If you are attending here in person, this is in your folder as well. So this can be very helpful, or this will be very helpful in figuring out how to delineate these students, how to score them. What are we really looking for? So it's okay, extracurricular activities and involvement. What does that really mean? What are we looking for? So I encourage you to really take a look through this scoring rubric and read it in depth and get accustomed to the different components that make up this scholarship application. Now, something that I really want to highlight, the student applications that you're reading are as individual and unique as the students who are writing them. The volunteers who are also scoring these applications, you are as unique as the volunteers in the room. So we want you to come up with your own methodology for how you will score these students. The important thing to remember is that you need to be consistent across the board, okay? So, you may in your head weight certain activities a little bit higher than others, and, I may view, one set of extracurriculars as a little bit stronger than the way that Christine might view a student. That's okay, as long as I'm being consistent across the board. As I mentioned, we work with a statistician, so we normalize all your scores amongst all of the other volunteers who are also reading the same applications to make sure that it is fair and equitable for the student, just so long as you are being fair and equitable as you are reading the applications, okay? So again, we'll take a look at a few sample applications in just a minute, but as you're reading through here, you'll see, for example, for extracurricular activities and community service, you may look at the quality of involvement and leadership versus participant. Is a student involved as just a member of 15 different clubs, or have they served in leadership capacities for maybe 5 different clubs, showing growth of leadership ability from maybe being a treasurer to a vice president and then to a president? Those are all things that you'll need to discern as you're reading these applications, and they're all things that this rating scale will help walk you through. So, as I mentioned, you'll be receiving, if you're reading virtually, a link to an individualized JOT form where you will record the scores for every application that you are being asked to read. Welcome to JOT form. This is what this looks like, all right? So you'll click that link, and right at the top, what you'll see, and I'm really excited about this, is that all of the information from the scoring rubric that you were just looking at is in the JOT form. So if you're reviewing on your iPad, on your phone, you have access to that rubric wherever you are. It's all right here, okay? So as you can see, all the different leadership components that you're looking for, et cetera, okay? So the way that you'll submit this, you are given a very specific link to a specific JOT form that has your name right here in a drop-down column, along with all the other names of the individuals in your scoring group who are reading the same applications as you. So make sure that you select your name in the drop-down, and then you'll select the applicant in another drop-down of the application that you're reading at that moment, so the one that you're scoring at that time. Make sure you're selecting that applicant. And then you'll input all of your individualized scores right here. And what's really cool, and this is the same as last year, and so hopefully you find this helpful, is that again, that scoring rubric has been implemented right here into the JOT form. So as you hover your cursor over, say, extracurricular activities and community service, a pop-up bubble pops up with all of that same information that's on the scoring rubric right here. So as we mentioned, quality of involvement, leadership versus participant. That's all right here, all to help you just provide context for the way that you're scoring these applications, okay? Now, once you hit submit, it'll take you to a separate window that will show you a nice big green check mark. That indicates that it has been received by our office and that it was submitted successfully. Now, a change that we are implementing this year from your feedback is that every time you submit, you're also going to receive a receipt of that submission in your email inbox. So you'll get a kickback email. So now you'll know in case like, ooh, I can't remember, did I just submit for Sarah or Jill? Now you'll remember because it's going right to your email inbox, okay? So that can also be helpful, in case, you double submit or anything like that. That can be a helpful tool. So now let's take a minute to go through a couple sample applications, also to get you familiar with what these applications look like. I'm not going to take too much time on here because, again, I don't want to sway your methodology too much, but I do want to point out some things to keep an eye out for and some things you might not be aware of on the applications. So first things first, I really encourage you to take a cursory read through of all of your applications. Just look at those applications, get familiar with your applicant pool, or work on a scrap sheet of paper before you do your submissions, because that first application you read, you're going to be like, wow, this student needs this scholarship. This is amazing. Then you start reading application 2, 3, and 4, and you're like, wait a second, they're all really good. Maybe that first application wasn't quite as strong as these ones that I'm reading now. The applicant pool is just, it's so exceptional. It's a tough job that we're asking you to do. We're really asking you to discern the cream of the crop. So you really have to dig deep and really read very carefully these applications. So take a minute to read through them all before submitting is my recommendation. You'll notice here, what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through 2 applications back to back, and you're going to see a weaker example of an application and then a stronger example, okay? So this is an example of maybe a weaker extracurricular and community service component. So you can see this person was the treasurer of their associated student union. They were involved in another organization called Ivy League Connection. Not too familiar with what that is, but you can get a little bit more information by reading the description they provided. And we've also included, this was in your email that you received earlier this week if you're online, if you're in person, this is in your packets as well, but it's a multi-page glossary of just a whole host of different activities and extracurricular involvements and programs that tend to be available for high school students today, because a lot of what is available today was not available even 10 years ago. Even when I was in high school, it's like, not that long ago, it's like a lot of these things are foreign to me. So take a look through that glossary, maybe have that handy as you're reading these applications, because the definitions can be really helpful. We ask students to provide as much context as possible. Some do, some don't. Now let's take a look at a stronger application for extracurricular involvements. You can see both in terms of breadth and depth, this student is superior. So you can see both in terms of the amount of hours that this student has devoted to extracurricular activities and community service, it's extensive, as well as you see some key leadership titles here. So in addition to just being a member of several organizations, they have served as president of 2, vice president of another. Okay. So again, and this is volunteer work and community service. So, for your application review, that's combined into one score. So you want to review those together. This is student number 1, maybe the weaker example, served as a volunteer for Friends of a Library, treasurer of the Interact Club. Those are all great, very worthwhile, wonderful. Let's compare to another application for community service. You can see, again, just a whole host of volunteer activities. This student was really committed to their community in a variety of different ways. So again, take a minute, read through these, really take a look too at the number of years involved, number of hours that they've served, number of weeks in a year. This can all help to provide better context and to provide a full picture of who this student is. Moving on to awards and honors. Now, awards and honors is a really interesting part of the application, because a lot of things that sound impressive might not be as impressive as they actually sound on paper, okay? So you really have to use that glossary, read the description, really read between the lines and dig beneath the surface here a little bit. You can see here, this top description here, I know it's a fine print for those of you who are here today, but it says that they achieved 2nd place by beating out 30 competitors. Okay, well, 30 competitors, that's great. That's great. I'm not, nothing against that. But 30 competitors is not that many in the grand scheme. Now, if it was, they won 2nd place in all of Southern California, or they won 2nd place, in their entire school district of 5,000, that might be a little bit more impressive. So you really need to look, look deep and compare and contrast between the applications that you're being given. You can see here, this is an example of a strong award section. We have a couple different scholarships that this student received of $1,000. We have some recognition here from the California State Legislature. You know, that always denotes a certain amount of prestige. So just something to keep in mind as you're reading through. Additional information. This is something that you really want to pay close attention to. Just as Mike mentioned during the admissions applications, they offer an opportunity for students to provide additional information that provides context. We ask for the same information. So if a student, and in this example, you know, if this student, both their parents work, they had to assist their siblings, you know, they only have one computer, so they let their younger brother do homework first. All of those things may paint a clear picture as to maybe why volunteer work might not be as strong, or why they might not be able to be involved in as many extracurricular activities. You know, if they have to be at home to cook dinner for younger siblings, they can't participate in all of those things. If they have to work a 20-hour job to contribute to, you know, the finances of their family, that's important to note, and that can impact their extracurricular involvement and volunteer work score, and that is denoted in the rubric as well. So definitely pay close attention to this. Now, if there's no information provided, you know, I wouldn't penalize a student for not putting any information. That just means that their application and what they've provided in other areas of their application really spoke to their full experience. Okay, and that's okay too. So we don't want to penalize anyone for not putting in additional information, but it can help provide additional context. Essay questions, I'm not going to go into too much depth on these. You'll have the opportunity to read many an essay for your, during your application reading. But a couple things to keep in mind. One, we live in a world of spell check. If you are seeing a whole host of grammatical errors, that's something you want to pay attention to and may reflect in their score for those essay questions. You also want to take a look at, you know, is this essay question, or is their response to the essay question providing additional context? Is it well articulated? Is it clear they put some thought and effort into this? Or is it sort of just a regurgitation of their resume? Is it just kind of highlighting what they did, or is it actually showcasing you know, who they are as an individual? So really, you know, dig beneath the surface here a little bit as you're reading these applications. So we'll jump through that. Okay. Now, the final component is the letter of recommendation. The letter of recommendation is also really interesting because I find that seldom can a letter of recommendation hurt a student, but it can really help a student, okay? So this first example of a letter of recommendation is one of those that, you know, might not hurt the student, but it's not really doing much for them anyways. This is written by an instructor. You know, it says that this student has been, you know, in several of their classes, earning A's and B's. They've always enjoyed them in class, have a friendly and bubbly personality, et cetera, et cetera. That's great. Nothing against that. That's wonderful. Now let's briefly compare that to a different letter of recommendation. You can see just by length, this person really knows this student. This individual is speaking to their involvement across several organizations, all the volunteer work that they did, et cetera. Now, I work really closely with our Alumni Scholars Club, and often they will ask me for letters of recommendation once they're ready to apply for jobs, et cetera. If I work closely with a student and you know, can really speak to what it is that they've done here at UCLA, all the leadership that they've demonstrated, et cetera, this is the sort of letter that they receive. If I don't know that student all too well, or my interactions with them have been a little bit, you know, mediocre, this is more the letter that I would give that student. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. So that being said, I'm going to invite Christine back up. She's going to take us through the regional interview section.
Thank you, Jacob. Hi, everybody. So you've read the applications. We've scored the students. Now we invite about 300 students to interview. And so this is part of the process. And one thing to think about in the interview process is this is an important recruitment opportunity for students. They meet alumni wherever they are. So keep that in mind when you're interviewing these students. It is part of the recruitment process. So again, Jacob had mentioned the dates, March 31st, April 7th and 8th. Our office will work with Alumni Network leadership, steering committee members, other alumni in the regions to set up interviews around the country. We have the interview here at the Alumni Association, but we also do it around the country, and our network leaders or regional captains will take care of the logistics. We'll communicate with the student to set up those interviews. I'm trying to think of where else. And again, if students do not live in near an interview site, we will then interview them virtually, and we'll have a group of alumni volunteers who will interview virtually for us. So interview guidelines, this is very important. We will have a lead person in the region who we will give a set of questions to, and we will ask them to make sure that those questions are given in the same exact order, because we don't want one student to have an advantage over any other student. We want everything to be as similar as possible for every student candidate. Questions should be encouraged. The question should encourage candidates to formulate thoughtful answers. Clarifications of questions may advantage one student over another, so we don't ask that you do that. We will allow you to repeat the question but not explain. We don't want you to coach the student on the question. It could, again, give an advantage. So the score should be based on how the student formulates an answer, the thought they put into the answer, and how they got from question to answer. So now more guidelines. So you've interviewed the student. We want you then to score the student and not discuss it with the panel of alumni that are interviewing. We want you to give that student how you felt the student did, not what the consensus might have thought the student did. So again, nobody has advantage over another. So the dress code. UCLA attracts students from all walks of life. UCLA is known for its diversity, as Mike had mentioned earlier. This includes socioeconomic diversity. Although it's important that the student put effort into their appearance, please note that not all students can afford business attire. And volunteers will adhere to a non-discrimination policy of the University of California and not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, handicap, age, or sexual orientation. Now we've interviewed, national finals time. We invite the top 20 students to compete in national finals for more money. Again, national finals are a great recruiting opportunity, and at national finals, it happens pretty naturally. These students arrive on campus not knowing each other at all, and they leave as best friends. It has significant impact on their decision to attend UCLA, both financially as they do receive more money, but also because they make a set of friends, they feel more comfortable transitioning from high school to college, and this weekend personalizes a large university into a community for them. So Welcome Day is Saturday, April 21st. And we invite every student who has gotten into the Alumni Scholars Club to attend Welcome Day. And so these students arrive at noon. They have a faculty panel and then have lunch with the faculty so they can ask questions of the faculty. They then attend an alumni panel where they can ask questions of the alumni, learn about the alumni's experience both as a student and as an alum, and if they're involved, so that's a great opportunity for these students. They then have dinner in the residence halls with current alumni scholars, and then they spend the night in the residence halls with an overnight host who is also an Alumni Scholars Club member. Last year we had 70 students attend that day, and it made a significant impact on these students attending UCLA. Then on Sunday, we have National Finals Competition Day, and so we put these students in a group that they do all the competitions together. There's 3 different parts. So they do a group exercise where they have to solve something or put something together as a group to see how they work as a team. There's an essay competition where it also highlights their public speaking and writing skills, and roundtable interviews. And now I'm going to bring up Jake so he can talk about more opportunities.
Thank you. You're ready to keep volunteering, right? We're going to keep you busy all year long. As mentioned, immediately following the conclusion of our freshman process, our work is not done. We move right into the transfer process. So our transfer student process also includes an application review. That takes place in May. So we hope that you'll join us for that. You'll hear from us in late March, early April about opportunities to participate in that. Finally, next we mentioned earlier the Edie and Lou Wasserman needs-based grants. So automatically, students' needs are looked at for their incoming freshman year, but if they'd like additional needs-based funding for their second, third, and fourth year, we ask that they complete an application for a Wasserman grant, showcasing what they're doing on campus, just keeping us updated on what their involvement is, what their participation level is like here at UCLA. It may not necessarily be within the Scholars Club, and that's okay, but are they involved elsewhere on campus? Are they doing research? What are they up to? And then the additional needs-based funding is doled out proportionally based on the results of those scores. And then finally, the True Bruin Distinguished Senior Award. This is a really special award and a really special opportunity. This is open to all seniors, regardless of if they're an alumni scholar or not. They can submit an application for the Distinguished Senior Award. And it's a really special opportunity because you get sort of that full cycle view. You get to see what these students or what UCLA students, the true cream of the crop, have really been up to in their 4 years here at UCLA, what they've achieved, and what they're going to do once they, step foot in the real world in just a few months. So we hope that you'll join us to volunteer for that. It's a really special occasion. So that concludes the presentation. I'd like to bring Christine back up. We're here to answer any questions that you have. If you're online, feel free to throw out some questions as well. We definitely want you to walk away today feeling comfortable with the application process. And again, one caveat to note, if you have a question on the car ride home today, if you think of something that we weren't able to get to, feel free to give us a call, email us throughout this process. We want you to be comfortable and confident as you review these applications. We're definitely here for you in that capacity. So.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. How are students notified that they can actually apply for these scholarships?
That's a great question. So several different ways. We advertise on our UCLA alumni social media channels. We also attend the UCLA Admissions Open House Day. So myself and some colleagues were there talking about the Alumni Scholarship to all the people who attended that Open House Day. It's also prominently featured on our website. And finally, we do email notifications as well. So we email students. So they definitely get to know that the opportunity.
And so any student who is interested in coming to UCLA can apply.
And how many students in the past have you normally received applications have you received each year?
That's a great question.
And then the other part of my question is, how many applications how many readers review each application? Is it just one?
Great, wonderful questions. Okay, so last year, and it varies from year to year, so I can only speak to past statistics, not this year's, but last year we had around 3,500 to 4,000 applications that came in. Of that, it was around 1,700 applications that were read, so those were the admitted students. So our statistics as far as the students who get admitted are higher than the general admissions pool. The second part of your question was, I believe, how many times are the applications read? Our applications are read. We do one better than admissions at least 3 times. So we take at least 3 scores, and we strive for even more than that. So you'll find that within your application group, if you're reading online, there'll probably be anywhere from 5 to 10 other readers in your application group. We hope to hit that 10 mark. Of course, sometimes there's attrition and people don't follow through with submitting their scores. We anticipate that, and we prepare for that to make sure that every application is scored at least 3 times to provide a workable statistic.
And that's why it's also important that all of you are volunteering to make the load even less for you, because we know a weekend is a tight turnaround, but the more people who volunteer to read, it's very helpful. So thank you all. Danielle, there's a question back there you want to? Danielle's coming around, but those of you virtually, please send in questions because, oh, Anna, why don't you go now?
Two areas I struggle with. One, honors/clubs associated with groups that are not listed in the glossary. How do we handle those?
Sure. So just the same as during the application reading for the general UC application, sometimes it involves a little bit of independent research. So, Googling the school, Googling the individual club, looking up the school's website and trying to find that information. And always, if you find yourself stuck, if something doesn't make sense, give us a call, because often we have a lot more insight. We've been doing this a while, and we've seen it all as far as, what students will write on these applications. We can help with that. So give us a call during that process.
Mm-hmm. Danielle? Yeah.
Quick question, I may have missed it. How many applications does each reviewer review?
Good
Also
question.
a good question. And, it depends. So the application is open right now until March 12th. So we won't know we won't know how many applications we received until then. And we're still collecting volunteers. As many volunteers as we can get, we will take, because it lowers the burden on individual volunteers to read applications. We always shoot for, to give you a number, I think we're shooting for between 15 to 20 applications, and it may vary. So, we can't be married to that number specifically. But of course, if you have a friend who's an alumni who would love to read, send them our way, and we'll get them signed up and trained to read applications.
Because this will also be online, so you can review this performance,
Yes.
or whatever we want to call. There's training before you read again.
I think Anna has a question in the back.
I have two questions, but I'll go with this one. How do you ensure the diversity of readers?
Was there a second part to that question, did you say?
How to handle extracurricular activities that hit limit possibilities. I think I saw someone list 60 hours of extracurricular activities while school was in session.
Great questions. So to answer the diversity question, similar to the University of California, we don't take a look at things like racial diversity, sexual orientation, anything like that, because of Proposition 209. So that being said, we do ask when you sign up for to volunteer, we do ask for your graduation year, and that helps to provide a certain diversity of spectrum of experience when it comes to reviewing applications, and we do try and mix that up as much as possible so that the reviewers who are reviewing applications speak to a variety of different experiences as alumni, because we know UCLA and the UCLA experience has changed over these years, so we want as much of a diverse experience as possible. And the second part of the
You're doing great. You keep
Thanks.
going.
So thanks. Here all day.
All day.
So the second part of the question was.
Anna, repeat the second question again.
I
Please.
remember. Yeah, was it the?
He remembers.
So it was about if somebody puts too much, if it seems a little maybe shady on the
extreme.
application or extreme. If it seems too good to be true. It often is. So if something's not making sense on their application, then I would again dig beneath the surface, look up what some of these organizations are. Sometimes it might mean that the hours that they served were passive hours, that they didn't actually need to attend in person or things like that. But if the hours that they're accounting are literally more than the hours in the week, I would take that into account when scoring. Yeah.
I may have missed this, but I know you choose 20 finalists to do the national finals competition, but how many are chosen to be actual alumni scholars through this application process? I may have missed that number.
About 150 every year. It varies, within 10 or so, depending on funding and depending on new funds that we get throughout the year to sponsor an alumni scholar. But it's about 150. And then for the national finalists, those top 20 are already alumni scholars. They're competing for additional funds.
Barb, we're gonna here. No, give him Barb.
Maybe have missed this, but okay, for the people who do not have extracurricular activities due to the fact they're working 40 hours a week, how do you make sure they get a numerical score that reflects that time and that energy expended?
Absolutely. So, and that really, to ensure that they get the numerical score they deserve, that really goes back onto you, the reviewer, to make sure that you are looking at their employment and the additional information and scoring applicably, correspondingly within that extracurricular and volunteer activity. So we definitely, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
And then he has a question.
Hi, thank you. My question goes to letters of recommendation. Your last bullet point in your chart states the responsibility of the student to make sure the teacher can write a letter of recommendation to it. But before that, are we or are universities in general in contact with the schools? Tell your faculty to take the requests from the students seriously, because I've seen some where a letter of recommendation from a teacher seems like a nice kid, and it looks not like the kid might be picking the wrong teacher, but the teacher, I think, should have a responsibility is to say, I don't really know you that well, go to someone else.
Oh, I fully agree. And I think too, even to my anecdote earlier about the Alumni Scholars Club, if I don't know a student all that well, I think it's important for the teacher, for the administrator, whomever, to say, I don't think I'm the best person to write that letter of recommendation. Now, there's no way to guarantee that. The student is entitled to ask whomever they want for their letter of recommendation, but I would say that is the number one question that I get from students on the phone and via email is about the letters of recommendation. Who should I ask? Should I ask this person or that person? The advice that I always give them is whomever you think can speak to your experience the strongest. So, I think that's really essential, and that's what we tell the students, is that, the responsibility is on them to look at who their network is, who they've worked closely with, who can speak to that experience. It might not be the person with the loftiest title. It might not be the principal or the superintendent of their school. It might not be the president of the company that they work with. But, their supervisor, a teacher, an advisor who worked with them on an extracurricular project, whomever that is that can really speak to the character of that student, that's who we encourage them to apply or to utilize. And we tell them that when they call, we reach out to them to apply for the scholarship.
Okay, you're next.
I want to piggyback on that. Now, this is my third year doing this, and suppose my first question, suppose a student recommendation, I don't know, didn't have someone or didn't get there on time. First question. And then my second question is regarding, I noticed the deadline for the scholarship is November 1st, but the deadline for UCLA is November 30th. And my question is information about this scholarship on the website, is it prominent on there? I mean, I got a niece in a couple of years, I'm gonna be honest with you.
We'll let you know when she can apply.
No, I'll tell her about it, but I'm just saying, out-of-state students, is it prominent on the UCLA website when they apply to come to the school that they can apply for this scholarship?
Yes. So to clarify a few points about dates, so the application opens on November 1st. That's the same day that the UC application opens. So, we correspond our kickoff for that right at the same time. Now, they have a month to complete their UC application for admissions. That's due November 30th. They have 5 months to work on ours.
Yeah.
Because it is a little bit different. We ask for more information. Now, often with the UC application, they can put in additional information that may qualify them for a whole host of other scholarships offered, through the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships, and that's great. Ours is unique. It's a unique process, and we advertise it with the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships as much as we can. We're not able to have ours be more or less prominent than other scholarships. However, it is incorporated as often as possible. And the great thing about being hosted here at the Alumni Association is that we have really robust channels for communication via social media, via email, via 500,000 alumni worldwide, via Alumni Scholars Club alumni who spread the word. So we really put the word out there as much as possible during the advertising process.
Oh yeah, she asked about the recommendation letter.
So it's submitted online, which is nice, and it's a really streamlined process for recommenders to submit that letter. We make it as simple as possible. They just need to identify the student and the student's application number, which is given to them via the student. So once the student completes their application, they're given that link to then send to their recommender to complete. Now, it really is on the student to ensure that their recommender is completing that. We know that teachers, administrators are asked to do a lot, right? Especially in today's current climate, they're asked to do a lot. So we put that back on the student to make sure that they are following up, and that's a frequent question that I receive.
Jake, I think perhaps a follow-up question to that is, do we do any follow-up with the student in terms of if we haven't received a letter of recommendation, do we ping the student saying, by the way, we don't have this yet, are you going to send one in?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for that clarification. Yes, so we take a look. Now, we get a lot of applications that just are started but never finished. That being said, if an application is completed and submitted and that letter of recommendation still isn't there, then yes, we do ping that student and let them know. And frequently what we do, and what you can anticipate this year, is we leave that window for a letter of recommendation open, usually about an extra 24 hours for that student. We give them as much slack as we possibly can. We do have to cut it off at some point in order to send you those applications that are completed. But yes, we do.
Anna, you have a question in the back?
Yes. How many applications does each reviewer get? And must readers be UCLA alumni? I worked at UCLA for many years. May I participate? And how do you confirm that volunteers are UCLA alums?
Great question. So there's a lot of questions. Let's start with the first one. How many applications? We covered that a moment ago, but just to reiterate, we don't have a specific number. It depends on how many reviewers that we get and how many applications that we get. We want every application to be read at least 3 times. Those are our metrics. That's essential. That being said, we can anticipate roughly about 15 to 20, but we can't be married to those specific numbers. Now, you're going to have to walk me through these questions, Anna. That was a lot. So what was the next one?
Do you confirm that reviewers are UCLA alum?
So what we do is we look through, we have student workers who are fabulous, and they help us with a lot of that administrative tasks, so we are able to go through and we verify the status.
Can anyone that is not associated with the university participate in any of our volunteering processes?
So we look at the term UCLA alumni and the membership in the Alumni Association pretty broadly and pretty widely. This year, we're also incorporating parents into our review process of students who obviously aren't in the process this year, but parents of current students. So yes, so I would say if anyone has a question or wants to participate and they have a long-standing relationship with the university, not just, hey, my student happens to be applying this year, maybe I'll review applications, but if they have a long-standing relationship with the university or, they have a current student who's a student here or something like that, have them reach out to us. We'd love to have them as a reviewer.
Okay, here you go.
Are the applicants advised that their letters of recommendations do not have to come from a teacher or administrator? Because I remember last year I also did the transfer applicants, and one of the best letters of recommendations that I read came from one of their extracurricular or volunteer opportunities.
Mm-hmm. We leave it very open-ended for them to identify whomever they believe will give them the best letter of recommendation, and that's communicated throughout the process. Nowhere is it said that it has to be a teacher or anything like that. It frequently is, because that's who the students interact with at this point. They spend a lot of time in school, they get to know their teachers, but it's by no means said that that has to be the case.
Daniel, go ahead.
When we begin reading the applications on the March 16th weekend, will we be reading applications from only those students who have been admitted?
Yes. So we value your time as volunteers, and given the nature of how selective UCLA is and has become, as Mike highlighted earlier, it's just the best use of all of your resources to only review applications of students who've been admitted. That's why we have to wait until those admissions decisions go out in order to begin our review process. That's a decision that has been long-standing with alumni scholarships. Yes, yeah. Danielle, do you have a question in the back?
Sorry, I'll go ahead and stand. Hi, good morning. My name is Carolyn. I've been a past volunteer, and I just had a question regarding communication to volunteers, because it's, at least to me anyway, it's a little bit confusing in terms of once you register on that one email that keeps getting sent, and then I didn't realize there was another registration form. So I guess for the upcoming interviews and application reading and national finals, will there be different sign-up forms or email forms that you'll need to complete, or once you say I'm interested in this, we'll get information?
So since you've signed up for this, we will then email you, in that one form you signed up to attend here today, you then marked if you're interested in interviewing national finals. We'll be communicating with you as the process is moving along so you can participate how you would like to. Does that make sense? Does that help? Okay, good. We're going to take just one more question. We have a lot of people waiting. We'll answer the questions. We'll be here.
For those in the building, we're happy to stay, and we will answer all individual questions. We just want to be respectful of those
the people
who are
online. Okay, Anna, why don't you do your virtual?
I just checked the website for the freshman application, and it says the application deadline was extended to March 12th from the original February 19th deadline. Is that so?
Correct.
Correct. Yes, so students can apply till March 12th.
Thank you.
Now, those of you also virtually, if you have other questions, just email us and we will respond to your questions. We're going to end the program now. You want to go to the last slide?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we want to, let's see here, provide you with our phone number and email address if you have any questions throughout this process. We know that it involves a lot of different steps and it is a little bit complicated, and we're so grateful for all the time and energy that you put into reviewing these applications, meeting these students, serving as an ambassador. So please give us a call at any point. We're happy to answer questions throughout the process. Yes, yes.
Now, before we close out on tape, I do want to introduce Julie Sina, our Associate Vice Chancellor for Alumni Association.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you so much to everybody for giving up your Saturday morning, and more importantly, to ensuring your legacy of fabulous Bruins. Because your responsibility is to really select the next generation of alumni scholars. And for that, we are so incredibly grateful. And I see so many familiar faces around the room. I know people that have been doing this for a few years. And so thank you for coming back. Thank you to the new people. Thank you for bringing people into this process, because this is important to your legacy, and we're so very grateful. I do want to go back to one question and acknowledge a couple of our leaders that are in the room. As you know, we have networks, alumni networks around the universe. So we have those by geography in terms of our regional networks. We have a very strong base of identity-based networks. And then we also have our affinity groups. So somebody asked a question, I think, close to the front, but how do we ensure diversity in our readership for scholarships? And one of the ways that we do that is through the leaders that are in the room today. It's through the recruitment of all of the representatives and all the folks that are involved in our regional, in our identity base, in our affinity groups, that we have a really great opportunity to ensure that our Bruins are well represented from however one identifies and participates and leads Bruins around the universe. So again, thank you for that. And one more plug is, because you are so passionate and committed to our Bruins and to our students, how many of you are on UCLA 1? Thank you. And if you're not, please check it out. It is our online career portal. And one of the things that we do, particularly at this time of year, is to encourage our students who are getting ready to graduate to make sure they're on UCLA 1, to make sure their resume is updated, so they can find all of you. So they can get some really, hey, I'm really interested in the field that you're in. Could I maybe talk to you? Could I connect with you? Could I maybe shadow you? Do you have an internship? Do you maybe want to hire a fabulous Bruin? And that goes not only for our upcoming graduates, but it goes for Bruins throughout the your lifespan. It's our way of networking, making sure that we hire one another, we support one another, we network with one another. We know we can't always be on campus, but we can always be connected through the internets, right? So again, back to today, thank you so much for making sure that this next generation of Bruins is just as fabulous as all of you. So thank you, and go Bruins.
Okay, so we're done for the day, but stick around. We're here for questions because I know many of you had a lot of other questions.